Hi, everybody. This is Steve Roy, author of the Killer Stand-Up Online Course, and I'm on the phone today with comedian Dave Arena, who's one of my students, and he's got some really interesting stuff to share, I believe, that will be of interest to not just new comedians, but comedians who have been doing it a while. Just so people know a little bit about you, I mean, obviously they can find some information about you at davearena.com, but give folks a bit of an overview of your stand-up comedy career, how you got started, what you've done, where you've progressed, and what's going on with you now.
Sure. I actually started about 8 years ago in Cleveland, Ohio, which is my hometown, and I started at the Cleveland Improv, and I answered an ad to do, they call them auditions, I guess, but, you went down there at like noon on a Monday or Tuesday and just with a bunch of other comics and, try to do 3 minutes in front of the booker. And, they kind of gave you feedback and advice and kept you coming back. And then the goal was to get onto like a showcase show where, there was maybe 10 or so comics that were new and they brought all their family and friends to fill the crowd out. And that's kind of was my first experience. And
that was in Cleveland, Ohio, correct?
That's correct. And that was about 8 years ago, like I said. And it was probably I guess you could either go one of two ways. Either you're going to have a horrible experience and bomb, or you're going to feel that you did pretty good and kind of get addicted to it. And I fell in the second category. I mean, you know how it is. Like, looking back, it was horrible. But for my first time, I thought it was like, wow, I'm, like, getting some response and, some laughs. And I didn't really have great material, but just kind of being myself. So that it just kind of started from there, and I got the bug, and it just kept coming back. And then, I'd say I was on a relatively fast track. I mean, it took me about 10 months to get booked at the club. The Improv is like an A-level club. So, I mean, to get booked even as an MC there after 10 months was pretty decent, and, started doing some road stuff. And, so, I had some, I guess, success relatively early on.
Exactly. And then, and now you're in New York. Is that correct?
Yes. I actually hit a period after about, maybe 4 or 5 years in Cleveland. They have 2 A-level clubs there. They have a club also about 30, 40 minutes away from Cleveland. I had worked all those clubs as an MC. I did some road work. I kind of was, I don't want to say I was burnt out, but I was kind of, the material was getting old. I wasn't really happy with it. Just, I guess the emotional attachment, which is something that I'm sure we'll get into, like, so the emotional attachment to the material was starting to fade. So, like, with the same material that I was doing well before with, it was just not, something just wasn't connecting anymore. And, I kind of was not doing it for, about a year or so. And then I moved to New York. It'll actually be 2 years ago, November 1st. So I'm here in Brooklyn, New York, and figured I'd plant myself here, kind of in one of those capitals of comedy, I guess, one of those big cities. And, where I could get up a lot, even if it's open mics, I figured I can get up several times a night and just, keep plugging away that way and just get better.
Sure. Well, my next question ties into what you just talked about. I mean, I took a look at your one of your videos, and you're on fire. So my question is what is it that led you to take a look at what I had to offer in the way of stand-up comedy education?
Yeah, I didn't even get introduced to your course or anything until after I was in New York, and it just came at a perfect time because, like I said, I was kind of going through this period where I had some success early on. I was, used to doing well, but I went through that year or so period where it just wasn't connecting anymore. I was kind of phoning it in. I was doing not everything, but certain things were just kind of, I was trying to do clever bits and jokey jokes and, you know what I mean? And there was no emotional attachment there, and I think I just kind of got sick of saying some of the stuff. I got tired of it coming out of my mouth. So I was kind of stuck in a rut when I moved here, and then moving to a big city like this where, Cleveland was such a small market where you know everybody and you're kind of, there's a few comics that are kind of working and near the top, I guess, of the food chain. And you come here and it's just like a huge market, a lot of good comics. You don't know where to go. So, so you add the fact that I was off for a year and kind of rusty, and then add to that I'm moving to this big city, and I was kind of really overwhelmed and kind of searching for something. And I actually saw I Am Comic and saw your software on there and started with that. And then eventually, over the weeks, I got the course, and, that really opened my eyes to not only a lot of new ways of doing stuff, but it seemed like it was what I needed at the time. And I guess my story is a little unique because, I know we've talked before in the past where you have a lot of students where they're frustrated because they're bombing a lot or they're not quite getting it, and then you kind of open up their eyes. I had like the opposite experience. I did really well out of the gate and had some good success, and then kind of got frustrated and, with just not being myself and not doing things, I guess, how I'm naturally funny, and writing was such a chore for me. And so I kind of have a little bit different story like that. So now, and then when I got into your course, it really was just what I needed at that time, I think is the best way to put it, if that makes sense.